I'll talk to you about in just a minute, around learning organizations. That was really the crux of my degree, was around education and how we organize learning organizations to do right by kids. So in terms of my core beliefs, one that I really stand by and truly believe in is this space of learning as acting superintendent, learning as district staff, learning as principals, learning as assistant principals, teachers, certainly our kids and community members. Because I truly believe that in order for us to grow, we all have to keep on this mindset of being a learner. What is it that we can learn today to help us improve our practice tomorrow? And that's regardless of how well we're doing. And District 25 typically does pretty well, comparatively speaking, to the rest of the city. But at the same time, we still have tons of work to do here in the district to support our kids. So underneath that first bullet that you see are all the ways that I believe in terms of making sure that that happens. Consistent use of information, meaning looking at data to inform our decisions. But the last one that's on there is also super important to me, and that's around expectations. Making sure that we all have the highest of expectations for all of our children here in our district schools. When our expectations lower, our kids are going to work to that. When they're really high, they're going to strive to reach those expectations. So for me, it's about conveying that message of high expectations for all of our children on a routine basis. That's something that you'll hear from me often, including the space of learning. How are we making sure that we're serving as learners in our work, in our community. So New York City Public Schools mission statement, this is something that Chancellor Banks put forth, which is not a very lengthy statement, but I do think it's really important one for the work that we do, not only in New York City, but certainly here in District 25. And it calls to the space around ensuring that each student graduates on a pathway to a rewarding career and long-term economic security, equipped for it to become a positive change for the world. And much of the language that's in this statement, you can start pulling apart and talking about the importance of what does it mean to be equipped? What does it mean to say that we're ensuring that kids are going to be in this space of learning where they are graduating ready for the next level of their lives? And for us as a district, that space kind of lives within our vision statement. Growing together as one community, the space of making sure that we're building really strong foundations for our kids as learners. And that begins as early as in our schools where we have pre-K, in other schools where we have our pre-K, and all the way on up into the 8th grade. The priorities that I'm going to share with you tonight are basically in that space of growing from that space of foundation through the 8th grade where we're ready for our high school degree. So our mission statement is relatively long, but I do want to say that what is currently here is really about making sure that we're providing opportunities for our kids to become critical thinkers, problem solvers, that we're supporting their social emotional learning needs. And you'll see that in just a few moments where we kind of create these spaces in districts with the addition of new programs across our schools to support reading as well as social emotional learning here across every single school in District 25. The one difference this year compared to previous years, which I am very excited about, is that there's going to be continuity of program across every single building in District 25. Changing the conversations that we get to have in team meetings with principals, with assistant principals, with teachers, around the things that are working for our kids and around the things that may not be working. So that common conversation I'm excited about. Even though we have schools that had similar programs in the past, even those programs over time have shifted to a point where they weren't really all that similar anymore. So creating conversations around that was not as available as it's going to be now during this new rollout of curriculum in our district schools. So you hear us refer to District 25 as Team Awesome. We do have a really great group of people that help support District 25. I'm not going to spend a long time on talking through each and every individual that is within our team, but I will mention certain spaces where you guys have access as parents. If there are things that you need or there are questions that you do have, we have an instructional team that supports our early childhood kids all the way through the space where we have folks that are supporting our middle schoolers as well. We have folks that are connected to special education. We have folks that are connected to English language learners, both from the compliance and programming side and the side of instruction. We have a gentleman that's connected to attendance. We have folks that are connected to student services around social and emotional learning needs. We have a very robust team that's really here to support our teachers, our principals, assistant principals, and our families. So what you will see, let's go back. What you will see here at this site, our District 25 site has a bunch of information on it. So I encourage any of our families. They also have all of our meetings, our public meetings. We record them. They're posted. All of the resources from those meetings are up online for anyone that wants to view them. And you have access to all of that at any time. But this particular part of our site goes directly to the About Us, so that there's a little clip and an image for every single individual that is on our team, so that everyone can get a viewpoint as to who we are as a district community. So as you can see here, that I'm not sure I really love the image of myself up there. We might be changing that one, flopping that one out at some point. But there I am. Ms. Mitchell is really kind of responsible for all things facilities-wise. When anything goes awry in any of our buildings, Ms. Mitchell really takes care of connecting with the people that are necessary to alleviate whatever the issues might be. Louis Latito, who is right here with us right now, is kind of our mastermind around ensuring that our technology is always up in order, and then it's all things for our schools. So whenever there's an issue, Louis is our point person for any of that work. So our building leaders, our assistant principals all know if they need to get directed to a location or to someone to help. Louis is our point person for that. So we do have the instructional team, as I mentioned. Anna Arrigo is the first person that you'll see there. She is our HMH individual, so anything around HMH, Anna is our lead point person for this work. Along with Melinda, who really supports the middle school side of that. Beth Eaton, who you'll see there on the right, is our math instructional lead, supporting all things math and our particular priority that we have for math, which I'll share in just a moment. Rounding out our English language learners, Michelle Lee is our English language learner support. She provides professional learning. She visits our classroom, supports teachers in classroom, and does all things related to ELS. We have two intervention specialists, AIS intervention specialists, Arifa Khan and Danielle Bergman. They're really here to support all of our early childhood work with Hegarty and Foundations, our two early childhood programs, to support phonics and phonemic awareness. They visit our schools on a routine basis. They're in classrooms. They're helping break down data, and they're supporting our kids at the earliest of ages become readers. Diana Stein is our health and wellness instructional lead. She supports physical education in our district. She also is the lead point for Mind Up, which I'll talk to you guys about in a few moments. So she's really does a ton of work. We have so many sports programs in the district, and a lot of them are because of Diana's work, including our basketball league. She created a bocce league for our schools this past year, which I am looking forward to. And anyone that I am a competitor, just so you know, I'm going for the win. I will go for the win. But Diana is responsible for a number of the different leagues that we have here in the district, and we're looking to continue to grow those because we know that our kids really do enjoy it. It does really connect with many of them in different ways. Two new members, Amanda and Blair, are both here also to support the rollout of our reading curriculum. They're also visiting schools. They're also connecting with our teachers in that way. Debbie Winkler is a support for our principals to support teachers. She's also an English language learner support here in the district, works with both elementary and middle school. Tracy's all things data. She supports, makes sure that our ELs have the appropriate program, that our students with disabilities have the appropriate program, and they're receiving the services that they need. Nathan is our special education point person. He's our AZ. And for any of our families that have children with special needs that have questions, I encourage you, please reach out to Nathan. He will get you the answers that you need. He did an amazing presentation last night at the Community Education Council, just around the rights for parents. Sometimes as parents, we don't necessarily always know the answer for our children when they very well may have an IEP. One of my children had an IEP. Being an advocate for your child is really super important. So if you have questions, Nathan is the person that you would go to if you feel like your child does need or currently has an IEP and you need more information. Rick is all things English language learners compliance, making sure that our kids are receiving the services necessary that as per Part 154, which is the state regulation. Greg is our student services manager, all things social emotional learning, supports our counselors in District 25, and does outreach to our schools in the event that there is some type of situation that needs to be addressed. The child gets hurt, there's a situation where a child might need support. Greg is our point person for that. Wing, who is here in the audience, is our district social worker. For all things to support our families when they are in need, connections to outreach to specific organizations and programs that are accessible to our families. Wing is all things in that regard and supports us quite well. And we'll have in the next couple of months workshops around executive functioning for any of our families that might have children that need some of that layer of support around executive functioning. There will be multiple sessions, one in Chinese, one in English, and one in Spanish, so that we're connecting with families from that very well may need specific language support. So thank you to that Wing. Austin is our attendance coordinator. Chronic absenteeism is a huge component of our work. And what I've shared with everyone, it's not that we're saying to families that, when your child is not well, that they should be in school. If they're not well, they have to get well. But at all other times, they should be in the building. They should be in the building and learning. When I break down our district data, there is a 25 to 30% difference in children that are not identified as chronically absent and their performance compared to children that are chronically absent and their performance. It is a huge gap in learning that occurs. And to me, it's always been logical, right? If you're not in school, you cannot possibly keep up with all of the work. So we do encourage all of our families, if you're having trouble, that's why we do have Wing. Wing is here as a big support. Austin is here as a big support, because there's so many reasons why a child is absent. It's not just as simple as saying, okay, my kid's out today. There are reasons that are behind it. And our job is to try to help our families as much as possible to overcome that so our kids are in school every day. So that is Austin. Janet is my administrative assistant. She does scheduling, connects with our district leadership team in a variety of other roles. Ms. Martin is here also. She is our community coordinator. She helped organize this tonight and all the other events that we do here in District 25. And I named two others that are upcoming, which I encourage our families to connect with. October 24th, we're going to be having a spectacular event at Bound Park, which is really focused on, instead of kids getting that whole, treat that might, have a little bit of an impact on those teeth, but getting a book that will impact those minds. So part of that event will be a book giveaway. There'll be music. There'll be some other giveaways and fun that'll happen during that time. We tried this in August, and we had over 1,000 people at Casino Park earlier this year. So we'll be doing it twice, once at Bound Park and once at Casino Park. Part of that is with Councilmember Palladino, who will be sponsoring the one at Bound Park, and Councilmember Ong will be helping to sponsor that at Casino Park. So there are flyers on our site for anyone that is interested in looking at that. And then we have Esther, who is here as well, and Jenny, both of them our family support folks. Anytime that you call the district, you're going to wind up speaking to either Esther or Jenny. And if in the event that you need to reach out to me, and they are there, it's like speaking to me as well, something that Superintendent Domingo would always say, and I am in full board with that. So anything that you do need, if in the event that I am not available right away, they will share any message that you have with me, and we will get back to you. Okay, that was a lot, just in terms of who we are. But I do want to make sure that you guys are aware. Obviously, this is part of the Listening to Learn tour. We have 2 more visits after this. one at 164, and one at PS 20. Those are two upcoming events. I will be doing a special one for our pre-K centers and for any pre-K families. That will be next week. Those are all on our District 25/event site. In addition to that, I will be meeting with kids. I'll be going into schools, connecting with our kids, asking them some important questions around their experiences in school. And I'm particularly connecting with our middle schoolers. Our middle schoolers, it's either everything is amazing or everything is not so amazing. So part of my conversation with them is going to be kind of find out which side of that they are really on, so we can make sure that their experiences are in middle school are as positive as they can possibly be. So I will be doing that as well on part of the tour. So in terms of the 90-day plan, there is a QR code for you if you want to take a look at what that plan is over the course of the first 3 months of the school year. Much of it is dedicated to 4 spaces of work. One around multi-tiered systems of support. And what you'll hear me talk about a lot in District 25 is the use of information to make decisions. And part of MTSS and having a really strong system for the instruction that your children receive is making sure that we know what they need as we are teaching. So a big push around our work is inside of this space of MTSS across our buildings. For children that need that additional support, it's inside of that Tier 2 and Tier 3, which our schools are all organizing for children that are falling outside of that space of success, and receiving program support through programs like Spire, through programs like Sound Sensible, through programs like Phonics for Reading, for the upper grades, programs like Just Words. Those are the types of things that your kids might experience across District 25. Aligned professional learning, really super important that not only are we asking that we're promoting excellence across the district, but that we're providing supports for our teachers. Every single school in District 25 is going to be receiving coaching support from an organization called Catapult. Catapult will be visiting all of our schools, connecting with our big building leaders to provide support in classroom for our teachers across District 25 as we roll out our new curriculum. So there will be supports that are coming in that form, including district professional learning that we'll be providing as well to support our teachers. We're also talking about shared and inclusive curriculum. That is what I was talking about and referring to into reading is our K-5 program, into literature for grades 6 through 8. We're also talking about the use of foundations and Heggerty across every single school in District 25. These are the programs that we are using to make sure that everyone's on the same page. And the last part is around partnering with community, and how I'm making sure that I'm connecting, not just at the beginning of the year, but my vision for all of this is that as frequently as I can, create opportunities for us, not necessarily just to hear from me, but for me to hear from you, but also be in community. One of the things I loved about the August event was that folks were just there. They were getting books, they were chatting with one another, they were connecting with people that were not necessarily even from their own school, but they were there for a common purpose, that we're going to really promote reading. We're going to talk about making sure that our kids are in books. And if they're having trouble reading, us as parents, we can pick up those books and read with them too. So a lot of my message this year is going to be really around how do we make sure that our kids have books in hand? How do we make sure that we're there with them as parents? And certainly our role as a district team is to make sure we're doing all of that work as a school and as a district system. But it's really to promote this notion of making sure that we're promoting reading across all of our schools. And in order to do that, we all have to be connected inside of this space, and that's one of my goals for this year. So I'm just going to run through these parts because they're kind of already layered into our priorities. So the first priority for our district is that all children learn to read well. The goal is that by the end of the year, at a minimum, we're going to grow by at least 5% for our children that are reading on or above grade level. In November, I will likely do another state of the district address for the CDC so that every parent can see what it is that we're doing on the current screening assessments. And for parents, it's important that you know that every child in District 25 in grades K through 2 is taking the Acadience assessment, which is a screener to get an idea of how they are as a reader. And in grades K to 2 for mathematics, it's the iReady assessment. For children in grades 3 through 8, the the iReady assessment is administered for reading. So it's important that you guys are aware of that as parents, like making sure that you're connecting with your teachers around what that means for you as a parent, because the more equipped we are with what is happening with our child in terms of their academics, obviously the better it will be for them as learners. But through this particular priority, it is mostly around implementation of our core programs, Heggerty Foundations and HMH into reading. Priority 2 is really a social emotional learning goal for us at the district. How do we make sure that our kids are physically and emotionally safe? In District 25, every school is implementing the Mind Up social emotional learning curriculum. This was actually developed, believe it or not, by Goldie Hawn. For those of you who are aware of her as an actress, she developed this a little bit after 9/11, primarily to support families and support adults and kids with coping, with the events at that time. And over time, this has developed into a program that was then brought out into our school systems. And we're fortunate that we have adopted this across our schools. And what it does involve is routine brain breaks throughout the day for our kids to kind of get grounded in just a space of mindfulness at the beginning of the morning, middle of the day, usually after recess, and then towards the end of the day, and any other times where our kids might be stressed during a lesson. It's okay to just take that little breath in, that little breath out to bring ourselves back into a good learning space. So the reason why we've talked about this particular goal is in District 25, we did see a number of incidents, most of them happening during recess. That's my ball, no, that's your ball, this is my ball, and then it results in a push or a shove. An incident then is identified in our schools. So the goal of this is that through this Mind Up curriculum, that our kids really are learning how to manage those behaviors, to really make good, smart decisions as a result of the lessons that they're going to learn, as well as being able to take those opportunities for that deep breath when and if there's a situation that arises. And it's often difficult as kids, which is why we want to make sure that we're training them to get into this space of making a really good choice. Instead of the push or the shove, how do I respond inside of that space? So the goal is that we're going to reduce those infractions by 10% by the end of this school year. Goal priority 3, again about reading. For this one, primarily for our kids across K through 8, but with the goal of children in grades 3 to 8 growing by a minimum of 5% by the end of the school year. This is through the implementation of Into Reading and Into Literature, with a real focus on our schools working on small group instruction for our classrooms, making sure that children that need additional support are receiving it, children that need that a little bit of acceleration, how are we organizing our lessons so that our kids on both sides of that space are receiving what they need to be successful inside of our classrooms. Our next priority is around college and career readiness. This particular goal in District 25 has been one that we've been talking about for quite a while. It had been primarily a middle school goal for our 8th graders, those that would be prepared to complete the Algebra 1 Regents by the time they got into 8th grade. Now, one of the nice things about this goal and one of the drawbacks to this goal, there's two sides of it that we have to grow from. One, yes, we've increased the number of kids that have taken the Regents. We had 1,400 children in grade 8 take the Regents exam this year. But the drawback to that is that we need to do a better job to make sure that there's enough access so that kids that are taking it are as successful as each other. So the window for kids that received an 80 and above was 65%, which in general is higher than where we were the previous year. But that's not enough for our kids. If our kids are going to be taking the Regents, we need to get more of our children that are having that access so that they're performing at that level 3 or 4 on that assessment. So part of that is around digging deeper into our curriculum from the earlier grades, from grades 5 up. This is really this is something that actually begins as low as our 3K classrooms, but the reason why we started in grade 5 is also because of the rollout of our reading curriculum. So we want to make sure that we're tapping into the space where we can do it really well in the upper grades on up for this school year, with the goal of improving outcomes across grades 5 through 8 in mathematics this school year. And the last priority is around parent engagement. So parents typically say favorable things about our district schools, which is great. 96, 97% favorable results typically from parent surveys. At the end of the year, we do the school survey, and usually the results tend to be pretty positive. The area that is typically the lowest is parent involvement across the district. And having said that, it's at 90% favorable rate. Our goal is to improve that from where it is. And not only at the school level, I really want to do a lot of these things, as I mentioned before, at the district level as well. I want to connect with our communities as much as possible, which is why we're doing these 2 events in October. I do aim to do something again mid-year, and then something again towards the end of the year, in addition to workshops that we're going to be offering throughout the year from the district lens. Last year's survey that we had sent out, one of the things that our family said was that social emotional learning support and mental health supports was something that we wanted, which is why Wayne, Esther, and Jenny are organizing some of those trainings, which you will all receive from the district in the form of a flyer and posted on our site for anyone that's interested in attending. So the more that we can do that, the more connected that we can all be, the more feedback you can give, and the better that we can become as a district. So that's just kind of the background of where we're going as a district, which kind of brings me to this last space, which is getting feedback from all of you. In the space of the things that you feel like we do well as a district community, the things that you feel like we need to strengthen, and then the last part, as I mentioned earlier, the advice that you have for me as I embark on this new role as interim acting superintendent in District 25. So Ms. Martin has cards. If you are not one who likes to be vocal in these types of spaces, you're welcome to just write it out, and we will make sure that we connect back with you. If you're willing to kind of speak out, I'd love for you to share some of those things with us as a larger community, both strengths and areas of need. And I suggest that you don't hesitate to say the things that we need to improve upon, because those are your realities, and your realities become our ways to organize around and make improvements with. So, please don't hesitate. And then there'll certainly be time for questions aside from that if anyone has any questions. But any comments around the things that you believe that we're doing well here in the district or have some strengths in that you'd like to share out?
I think this communication is very well. You're on a lot of platforms, Facebook, Instagram. There's always visuals going and always information going out. I know being here obviously, the information we put out to families is pretty consistent, daily, weekly basis. So I'd say as far as that, I think.
What about my Bitmojis? Anything on the Bitmojis? You'll find me in all kinds of places and trees and all things like that. Lewis has me everywhere. Thank you for that. I appreciate that. Yeah, and one of the common things that I have heard has been around communication. This being the 4th stop, it has been something that has been shared, which excites me that communities feel as though they're being connected with in that way. So I am happy about hearing that again here, for sure. Any other comments? Yeah.
I'm new to the school. I have a 3rd grader in kindergarten, and so I don't, have much experience with the district yet. But what I can say so far is it's been very positive, from the teachers to the students, and my kids love it. So I transferred my 3rd grader from another school, and I was so worried, but she loves it. So she's just wanted to give it a thumbs up.
Yeah.
I'm very thankful for this school, especially because I had my first son now is in 7th grade, and he had an amazing experience of the school. My second son is on 3rd grade now, and especially I will thank all of the administrations, the teachers, the districts, because it's very helpful with all of the programs
So the program that was here kind of morphed over the years, and Principal Lee can kind of talk towards how that has changed over time. The one thing that I see in this particular program that is especially important is the connection to the range of text. The text that's present inside of HMH is very rigorous. It is about connecting, and it's not to say that other text that was being used before wasn't rigorous. The organization of this particular program really promotes and has similarities to things that were done in the past. It doesn't mean that because this program is here that other things were not necessarily, didn't mean that the program here was the worst program in the world because we're making a change. But what it does do is create opportunities for kids to engage in rich text that is also going to push and elevate their ability to focus as a reader through standards-based types of learning experiences. What has happened over time with curriculum and with units of study that have been adopted for many years is those become modified and adjusted. And those modifications and adjustments are based on individuals that are creating those modifications and adjustments. Sometimes standards get lost in that space in terms of what is it that we're supposed to be making sure that our kids are achieving. So the goal of all of this across the district is come together as a collective group. So last year when we engaged in this conversation, this was building leaders from across the district that came together to have this discussion and landed collectively on this particular program for a number of reasons, including the resources that come with it. There is a range of resources that our teachers have access to, and I know I'm sure many of them are finding that there's an overabundance of resources, which the beginning is going to be about us learning. Really learning all of the materials that are present in there so that we can make really the best use of them. But to me, that is really kind of the biggest part of this is the range of text that is present and making sure that the alignment between the things that we're doing is there, which it will be still a work in progress for us as a district, but I do think it's going to benefit our kids in the long run.
Thank you.
Sure. Yeah.
Hi, I come up at this from a different perspective. I have one child that went through this district who is now in her second year of law school. And then I have a 3-year-old who's in the 3K center.
Awesome.
And a 5-year-old who's in first grade here.
Okay.
And I'm also an educator myself. When Lucy Calkins first rolled out TC, I was just fresh out of college. And I did not know that Lucy Calkins was at PS24 and was trying to observe the class. And she asked me, I didn't know who she was, what do you think of the program? And I said, it's horrible. I said, it's horrible because it doesn't address the needs of the ESL students, me being a former ESL student myself. And she turned red in the face and left, and I did not get the job at that school. Right, because obviously she probably went to some sort of school. I'm an honest person. So the problem, to adjust your thing, the problem with that program was that she kept developing it. It was like a work in progress. And every time you went for training, it was another college student developing the next series that was coming out. So it was never addressing grammar and phonics. It was really missing components, and teachers felt like they had to supplement and keep supplementing. It never addressed language needs. So even teachers now, when they're unpacking HMH, they're really, my colleagues right now are having a hard time teaching the grammar component. And I'm like, no, you have to fit that in. That is a big component that was missing before. We're trying to fit that in. You cannot skip over that. So they're like, let's not skip that. No, you gotta go back and make sure you teach that. Like, what's a declarative sentence? Like, they need to know that. That was the thing that was missing before. So it has, this year is, there's a lot that we have to unpack that we have to make sure we pick, but HMH, no program is perfect, but there's stuff there for us. What this district does, our kids do really well compared to the other districts. What I'm concerned about our district is the class sizes. And which goes to, I don't know if we're gonna have a question and answer part.
Oh, yeah, of course. But you can ask it now.
Okay, well, it comes into my other concern is the class sizes. I'm also an activist in education. I worked with Leonie Hansen, who was the president of the Class Size Matter. I worked on the legislative part with her. We passed that class size. We've been pushing and we got it passed. But I'm kind of concerned now because I feel like I worked hard on it and I feel like it's the last, maybe our district might be the last one to be able to implement it. Where are we on that?
So there's definitely going to be phases of this.
Right.
We're certainly definitely at the earlier phase of that 5-year
Right.
kind of rollout. Over the next several years, there will be other buildings that are added on to District 25 that will help alleviate some of that. And believe it or not, while we are very overcrowded, District 25 is an overcrowded district. We do have a number of spaces where this is not going to be an issue in terms of making sure that we're getting down to the ratios that are kind of shared with us by New York State. But it is going to be a process. It's not going to be one that I can tell you today, just based on the numbers that we do have. But over time, the goal will be to start, as this starts becoming more clear, especially centrally, in terms of how we're going to organize for this, there will be a plan that we wind up establishing over time for sure. So it is not something that is not inside of our mind's eye. It's certainly inside of our mind's eye. But in terms of an actual full-on plan, that I can tell you these are the schools and how that's going to be. That's not in that stage yet. But it is something that is in process. It's part of the conversation that we've been having for sure. It will result in other things that go beyond the space of certainly this conversation, certainly meetings with the Community Education Council and all of that stuff in terms of our classes and things of the like. But I am thankful we do have other schools that are going to be coming on board that will create space for our kids to go from buildings that have larger classes into buildings where there are more smaller class sizes to get into that ratio that we're talking about with the class size legislation. So I do know that it's certainly on the docket, but it's not something that I can give you a detailed plan just yet. But over time, we will certainly do that. Yeah, for sure.
That was something I got very nervous about
Yeah.
when we were looking at the plan.
So, I mean, is it more difficult in District 25 than in others? Yeah, I mean, utilization in our schools is high. It is high. Not high in every school, but high in some. And then we have to figure out how we would organize around that. Yeah, that's a great question. It's a great question.
Hi, I'm Sharice Mitchell from Moses Community College, also from 32 myself. I feel like communication has been good. I feel like the community events have been good. Kind of overcrowded because everyone wants that. So I like that you're expanding that to different parts of the year. My concerns are with the social emotional learning. I think that it's good, but I think it's also like a crutch. I saw with my son a lot of crying, a lot of, oh, I feel very angry, I feel very, I'm like, what is this? And I'm not saying that he became weak, but it's almost like he played that to the teacher. And it's almost like we have to put social emotional learning in perspective so that children can understand what we're using it for, how can it benefit them, as opposed to how can they use it to their advantage and become manipulative. But anyway,
They're very, very smart, aren't they?
we're working through that, but he's all right now. My concern, as I mentioned earlier to some people in the room, I'm doing a survey in early childhood. And then going to the schools and trying to ask and sell the survey to people to do it, a lot of the teachers the pulse that I got is, this is just one more thing. And I understand that HMA just rolled out, again, one more thing, something for them to learn, something to struggle with. And I understand that you're giving them support in that, but I don't know what that support looks like. Is it like just the PD? Is that ongoing support? Do they feel comfortable coming? Do they know what it looks like? That kind of thing. So I think that the teachers need more support, and also parents in a sense where they need to feel comfortable to come. Because it's different to put out all this information and they know where to find it, but are they feeling comfortable enough to go and use it, or go to all these wonderful people you have working in District 25, they feel comfortable?
So, comfort level is not necessarily a question that I've asked in terms of surveying families. But outreach has never really been too much of a problem from my perspective in terms of folks reaching out. You know, Esther and Jenny receive calls routinely from our community in terms of needs, including Nathan, certainly our AZ, receives communication pretty frequently. Our teachers are reaching out to our folks often, you know, sending emails in terms of supports and needs. So I think part of the whether it's filling out the survey that you're referring to, and the idea of another thing is not having knowledge of what it is that you're actually asking them to complete. I mean, I've asked people to complete surveys myself for my dissertation. It's not always the easiest thing. I had a school that I got 100 surveys back from, and I got a school where I got 10. You know, so sometimes surveys, while they are nice and they create a quick way to get information, for some it's like, yeah, I kind of met my max on the number of surveys that I've completed. So I don't know if I can associate that with the way that anyone is feeling, but I can say that anytime a new program comes out, it does create levels of discomfort. Because there's lots of learning that is taking place. In this district, we had a number of schools that did shift from the curriculum that they were using before to the curriculum that they're using now. So any change comes with its layers of stress that come from that. You know, in terms of layers of support, in district, we started that work back in March. That began with our principals. And our assistant principals, and we opened up a number of opportunities for teachers across our district schools. So we've been providing office hours, summer office hours, current office hours, visits to classrooms. You know, our concern actually is on the opposite side of that, is that are we getting into our principals and assistant principals so much that it becomes overwhelming even for them to also manage. So, because there are lots of layers of support that are coming to our schools, which is great. It is great. The next layer that will be starting will be the catapult coaches that are coming in. That'll be happening within the next couple of weeks. We had our kickoff meeting last week, so trainings will be coming in addition to the things that we've offered at the district level. Yeah, but great question. Great question.
What I wanted to shout out as us doing well, even prior to your last comment, this district has, I think, a history of leveraging resources and working together to better our experience for our students. I know that that will only increase tenfold with the curriculum that we're all on the same page with, because there are so many knowledgeable people in this room, in our district office, in all of our schools. So I'm really excited for opportunities to work with others, and at least within PS 184, we're really shoring up systems so that our teachers' voices can be heard, their questions and concerns can be answered, and that we can kind of work as a district to improve the experience for our students. So I'm pretty excited for that.
You know, one of the things that, in addition to these types of meetings, I did meet with our staff by a large Zoom meeting from my perspective to share the priorities and to also get some feedback from from our teachers. And my goal is to continue to offer those opportunities to kind of get the finger on the pulse of how things are going, what's going well, what's not going so well, so that we can the growth mindset and the space of learning is really, as I said, very important to me. You can't do that if you don't ask questions. If you're not really digging in to say, this is what I'm currently feeling inside of this work, and how do we work towards improving those outcomes. And just talking about the space of previous curriculum, there was a video recently that I had seen, and one of the big elements of why the push to change is when you have kids that are given books, and in this particular video, child reads the book super fluently, and in the background the teacher says, "That's amazing, you did that without looking at any of the words." Right? And then covered the illustrations, and then asked the child to read it, and the child couldn't do it. So when we think about the reason and the shifts that we're making, is to make sure that our kids have those foundational spaces of looking at a word that's maybe unfamiliar and using those skills to sound out the word to try to make sense of it, rather than just reliance on an image that where they wind up guessing in terms of what that word may or may not be. And I think, in general, there are really great practices that are embedded in lots of programs. It just so happens that that in particular was one that caused some gaps, in learning for our children. So for us, it's how do we close those gaps over time, and part of that is through our core programs that we're going to be implementing. So there was another question, which I'm sure is one that others may share around implementation of after-school activities. This is one that comes up in lots of spaces, and I don't have necessarily a great answer for programs like CBOs. I know oftentimes community-based organizations do come up in terms of can we have one in our building. What I will say is that I will continue to advocate for those types of programs. I don't necessarily control their placement in schools, but I will certainly advocate with any of our local elected officials really promoting and pushing for that. In fact, as on our way in, Principal Lee was talking to me about the organization of programs for after school. So it's already on the mind's eye here at the building. So we will definitely be working towards supporting that moving forward. Funding is always of concern, when we're talking about after-school programs and the type that we're asking for. If we're talking about programs that last from 2:20 to 6, much different from doing an after-school club opportunity that is for an hour. They're very, very different types of needs. The ones that last to 6 o'clock, or we're talking about CBO programs, those are not necessarily ones where we can just say, come. We want you to be here, please use our school. Those are harder to come by than it is school-sponsored types of activities and clubs that can be run here, but not necessarily to the time frame for some of our families that do need that extended space of, until 5:30, 6 o'clock. But this is one I will most certainly continue to advocate for in our schools for sure. And, there's not necessarily an answer for the type of CBOs, maybe perhaps that you're asking for.
Also, with the school crossing guard, I know you probably might not have too much connection with that, but I recall going down to the precinct to try and get more coverage for 32, because they had only 2 crossing guards. So I guess just making sure the children are safe and getting to school and making sure the coverage is there. But when I spoke to the officer, he said that they don't have enough people who want to be crossing guards. A lot of
So,
people are.
it's interesting that you say that, and, traffic safety is often something that comes up. It came up at the last school that it was at as well, at 129 just this past Tuesday. And I did connect with the local commanders about safety just that following Wednesday, that next day. I did reach out to them, and there are opportunities. If there are families or parents in district that wouldn't mind putting on that school crossing guard attire to get out there and do it, they do offer those opportunities for parents that are in the community. I will send the flyer to Principal Lee. And for any of you that know of someone that would be interested in doing that, we can certainly get you the outreach. It would involve training, obviously, to become part of the NYPD School Crossing Guard. I suppose they call it a unit. Say again?
Force.
Yeah, School Crossing Guard force, but it was something that was shared with me during this meeting to encourage any of our families that are interested to take part in said work to do that. I don't know that there's an unlimited set of resources where they're going to say, okay, we're going to send, we can do this for 15 of your parents, but it is something that is accessible and out there. So I will share that flyer, and we can make sure that any of our community members here that are interested, and certainly if you know of a parent, mom or dad, that wouldn't mind doing that, the option is there. They call for a 20-hour work week inside of the flyer, and then directions in terms of how to get access to it. But the one thing I will say about traffic safety is a lot of that is on us as adults. You know, that traffic is not being created necessarily by our kids. You know, and it's about how are we making sure that each other are being responsible in the way that we come to and from. So sometimes I have seen as I pull up to schools, not a double park, I see a triple park, where they're not only blocking one side of the road, they're blocking traffic from the other opposite side of the road. Getting out, allowing their children to walk between cars as they are getting ready to pull out. You know, that's not necessarily something that, yes, we have a ton of hands in the school, but I can't control a parent from triple parking. You know, and the only other options is you call the police department, and the police department can ticket. You don't want to ticket your own community for those types of things either. So, you know, part of that messaging is also as community members, what's the safest way for us to do that? I know everyone's got to go to work, everyone's got to be in another place, but making sure that our kids get into the building safely should be the most important part of that drop-off. So there's not an easy answer to that. But consistent reminders from our schools, consistent reminders from our PTA, from our school leadership team, around what those routines should be for our families will also be part of the equation. It's not just a crossing guard and it's not just NYPD, although that will be obviously very helpful. It's also about us making sure we're connecting with our community members. You know, when things aren't right, you know, it's important that we just kind of acknowledge that, listen, we can't keep doing that. Someone's going to get hurt. As a principal, you know, I had a relatively big school. I had 1,600 children in my school. And one of my cameras was on, I had a camera that was outside of the building, and, you know, one of my students, right from my schoolyard, ran right out into the street. And there was a bus that was kind of blocking the view of the car that was behind that. And rather than the car waiting, like he should have, he decided to step on the gas. And in process, wound up knocking into one of my students, breaking his arm. Now, none of that had to happen. All that driver needed to do was wait until the bus driver was ready to move, and everything was fine. You know, so it's really about sometimes us as adults and how we manage ourselves, even in our vehicles, and that we need a community effort for. That's not just a school, that's not just parents, that's not just police department, that's everyone that needs to be on the same page, in my opinion, to make sure our kids get in and out of the building the right way. But safety, traffic safety always comes up. And, you know, some schools have changed two ways to one ways to support that. And then even in the one way, it winds up becoming, instead of a one-way street with one car, it becomes three, and you can attest to this at 129, it becomes 3 cars lined up across this now one-way street where it blocks all of the traffic. And that is not a school thing, that's not a child thing, that's an adult thing in terms of how we're responding to the traffic that exists. So we'll continue to work on it. We'll continue to support it with our borough safety director as needed. We do ask her to go out to our schools where there are problems, so that we can kind of examine where the problem areas are. If we need to redirect or refocus our exits, then we can do that. Sometimes it's as simple as redirecting an exit to change where certain parents are coming to pick up. So we can always do that. Schools like 32, a little bit different in terms of 35th Avenue is a really interesting road over there to drop off and pick up over there right at 32 because that's exactly where they do that double, triple side, and then suddenly you can't get down the other end of the street. Lots of honking of horns and all that fun. So, yeah.
What about like these public service announcements, even on the website? Because I don't know if you remember those commercials, like when people would text and drive and be like, this is what could happen. Like, not to scare people, to show them what could happen. That this is the right way to do it. I mean, I know it's kind of silly, but I mean, if they see it.
One of my other listening and learning tour events is actually tomorrow morning. I'm going to be meeting with the precinct, the commanders from each of the precincts that support District 25. Safety will be coming up from me, including traffic safety. One of the things that I'm going to ask them for is to provide opportunities to offer some supports for families in this respect, offering up workshops, offering up space for kind of what you're talking about, but making it in a live space and giving access for other community members. That's what I'll be asking for tomorrow, so that we can really promote this space of safety inside of our schools. That is one of my agenda items for them tomorrow when I meet with them. Any other questions? Comments? Yes?
Since you're talking about safety, will they be installing a buzz-in system at a security?
Yes, that is happening in a rolling way.
Okay.
We can definitely touch base and kind of get a little bit of a timeline. I can't necessarily give you the
They are
timeline.
phase one
Yeah.
schools, so
I
they
know you
did
wanna-
come in to,
Look at the,
look at the building and figure out and take pictures of where they're gonna put the camera, where the bells are gonna go, so it's in the works.
Yeah, it's in process. Completion timeline, I can't get you right this moment, but we can definitely follow up and get a timeline. We are in that space where District 25 is amongst schools that will be getting it this year. That's a great question.
Yeah.
Are you raising your hand, Lou?
no, I'm signing to Esther.
Okay.
She has
I
her
work
own
with you. Why are you
report.
asking me questions right now?
Only time I can get you, because you're so busy.
So, yeah,
I just want to say that the push for reading is really important, and especially supporting families with the reading, because I think sometimes families, maybe they don't have time, or, but if you put the book in their hand, like you said, there's the resource. They don't have to worry about, let me go find a book, what's appropriate. I think that that's good.
Yeah.
When you're giving them a level book or something that's appropriate for the child, now they have an idea. I think when you give people resources, then they know what to go on.
yeah.
Not saying, oh, you don't have an excuse, but here it is. Now what do you
Yeah,
do?
and listen, I wish I could say, I've been an educator, and this is now my 26th year. I struggled with that as a parent, with both Emily and Matthew. It's not always the easiest thing to say, you know what, you worked until 6, by the time you get on the road and home, it's maybe 7:30, 8 o'clock, and now I need to start engaging in this next phase of it when kids are almost getting ready to sleep and you want to sit and read a book with them. So there are a lot of struggles that do exist in that space. But I agree with you, it's sometimes it's as simple as making sure that we've created the time to do that, because we can also get wrapped up in our day. It's not hard to do. I mean, everyone lives very busy lives. And those busy lives can get the best of us, and before you know it, day 1 passes, day 2 passes, and before you know it, it's 2 months you haven't looked at a book with your kid. So those things do happen, so it's around that concerted effort. One of the things that Esther is going to be doing with our parent coordinators is also training them in where are the resources inside of HMH, so that our parents are aware where are the parent resources inside of HMH. So we'll be offering those opportunities as the year goes on, not only for our parent coordinators, but for our parents. Our parents from our President's Council also asked if we can engage them in an HMH component where they can get an understanding as families on how to use some of the resources that they're going to be receiving at home also. So we're going to be spreading that word out to our families as well within the implementation.
Does anybody have any advice for Dr. Mike in his new role as superintendent?
Thank you, Liz. What a great moderator.
It's the best question.
And I don't really know you well, and I know sometimes people just listen and it's just kind of lip service, like, oh yeah, that's nice, that's what you think, and what are you going to do with the feedback? How are you going to feel though?
So one of my biggest beliefs around feedback is that there's no point in asking if you're not going to do something with it. So as this Listening to Learn tour comes to a close over the next week or so, you're going to receive just kind of the overarching feedback that we have heard. Ms. Martin is taking notes. We're getting feedback by email. We're getting feedback by a Google form. And each of those things will be covered with a response. So some of the things that you've asked, I've actually provided with you what we're going to do about it. So how are we supporting parents? We're going to be supporting parents in this way. We're going to be connecting with our parent coordinators. Parent coordinators are going to be connecting plans around HMH. We're going to be offering workshops in HMH. We're going to be connecting with traffic safety. We're going to get them to work on the things that we're doing. So inside of questions that I receive, I tend to give you the responses around what we're going to do next as a result, which will be followed up in a document that everyone receives. Here are the things that we learned on our tour. Here are the things that we have either already done, started to do, or are planning to do in the next coming weeks. So the goal is not to just hear things. I'm not a believer in that. You know, there is no purpose, honestly, then I'm wasting everyone's time that's here. And, you know, the next time I ask, why would you come? You know, so the intent around this is not to just, you know, pay lip service to say that we're doing, engaging in a tour. Frankly, you can see me on any video and say I can do the very same thing. I didn't need to come here for that. You know, and that's not the relationship that I want with anyone. The goal is to hear from you and to then respond. Now, it doesn't mean that the response always is going to be exactly what everyone wants, but the responsible one that we can actually do during the school year to meet the needs of the district as best we can. So, love that comment, and I'm fully invested in that space because there's no point, there's no why do this. I just would have wasted an entire hour of everyone's time if all I was going to do is let you talk to me and then do nothing with it.
So my piece of advice actually to Dr. Mike is to make sure that you balance your work, your family, and your health, because Dr. Mike, I will tell you, is one of the hardest working people that I've ever met, and he really is true to his word. You know, I've been learning under him for the last 9 years, I think, and you know, he is about follow-up. He is about, you know, he's a man of his word, and I see that, you know, his dedication to the district is just continuing and growing. So we don't want you to burn out, Dr. Mike. You need you around for at least the next 5 years.
Well, thank you for that. You know, and Grace is saying this because, sadly, you know, I you know, in booking my calendar, Matthew's birthday was Tuesday, and Dad booked an event to be out of the house until 8 o'clock on Tuesday night. You know, so while Matthew didn't say that he understood, Dad felt it because I was like, oh, how could I do that? You know, so I didn't book one for Emily's, which is next Friday. So I'm good for next Friday, although Matthew might not like the idea that I did not book one on her day too. But yeah, that's great advice. I appreciate that, Grace, and I will do my best to stay in that space. But you know, I do believe in making sure that I am here for everyone as best I can. So, thank you. All right, 184. I really appreciate your time. I appreciate you allowing me to have the chance to speak with you and hear, you know, your thoughts and concerns or questions. I am but an email or phone call away, so if any of you have any questions or concerns, you certainly know our district office will be there to field any of those calls. And we'll be following up in terms of certain things around traffic safety. I'm going to send Grace the flyer. If you know families that are interested, let them fill out that application. You might also have a little bit of fun with them in the morning if they become a crossing guard. That might be a little bit of fun for you too. But I encourage you to do that outreach because we are here for you. Okay. Thank you guys. Have a great day. And I hope you don't mind me sitting in front of you like this, standing in front of you like, you know, in an auditorium setting. I didn't want to.
I'm a professional.